Hello, and welcome to another edition of Behind the Poem Stories. So, as I told you recently in the introduction to Coffee and Papercuts, I wanted to restart. I wanted to revamp my explanations of the poems, and one of the reasons why I wanted to is I wanted to kind of keep it in order, keep it in the way that the book was written. So as you can see behind me is Birdie's Bar. It's where I wrote the poems, or most of the poems in Coffee and Papercuts. A few of them are older than that, but most of the collection was written in the place you see behind me. So I wanted to start with the very start, with the very beginning. The first haiku is in the book. Now, there are 5 haikus throughout the book, and because those stories are a little bit more confined than the rest of the stories I'm going to tell you about all 5 of the haikus in this collection in this video. So, first of all, when you look at the table of introductions, you'll notice that the titles of the haikus have a little asterisk next to them, and when you turn to those pages, the title is not on the page. That is because I decided to not give the haikus titles. I put a kind of basic word that connects to the meaning of the haiku in the table of contents so that people could find them. But most of the haikus were connected to an image or an experience, an idea that came to me within that moment. Now, haiku is a very confined form, and when written in English is focused on syllables rather than any kind of rhyme scheme. It's also very, very focused on a single moment, that really kind of confined spark. And I do have another video on my YouTube channel called Haiku in the writing tips section, the playlist for writing tips and readings. So if you are interested in haiku, renga, and tanka, please do feel free to look up that video. I am by no means an expert. This is a Japanese form originally. So for experts, you're going to have to go to Japanese literature professors or Japanese literature writers who have the original cultural background on haiku. What I present to you in this video and the video on using the haiku form is only the English speaking perspective. So my haikus in the Coffee and Papercuts volume focus on those moments that kind of caught my attention either in a photograph or at a moment in time of my life. So Gates, the picture that I put with Gates, is an artistic rendering of a photograph I took one Christmas when it was snowing out of the back of my parents' house. So when I think about Gates, or when I looked at that haiku and that image, it was about home, it was about traveling from A to B, but it was also about moments of transfer. That idea of when you're little, you're going down the path in and out of home with family. And when you are older, you are making those decisions yourself. But gates are those sections that kind of keep you and give you those moments to choose to go through them. The second haiku in the collection was titled Below, and it is related to the image that I used for Variant Blue in the collection. But Below also recognizes a moment when I was a teenager and I had gone to Maine with my family. We went on a whale watch. And there is a moment, if you're ever on a whale watch or any around any marine animals, particularly in the wild, where you realize just how much smaller than we are. On the whale watch that I had experienced when I was a teenager, the boat had a moment where a gray whale was underneath the surface and it was coming at the whale watching boat, not to ram it or crash it or anything, but it dove directly under the hull right in front of my feet. And I could at that point see not only the bit that was above the surface that we could see from a distance when we were on the whale watch, but also all of the whale underneath the surface. And it was overwhelming, that sense of how much bigger and how much more life and this creature had. and the beauty of it, the grace of it, the speed and power of it. Now, it didn't, as I said, ram the boat or anything. It did not intend to, or it probably would have. The tail was not brought above. It was only came straight at the boat and dove directly underneath it into the deep. And it was a really profound moment for me. So that haiku about below does reflect that nature of how we are so much smaller than we think we are, and that the universe is made of creatures so great that they can remind us of that when we need to, and we just have to look below the surface. The third haiku in my collection, called Spikes, features a photograph I took at a cactus farm in Lanzarote, near a famous artist house and a restaurant. It was quite an unusual kind of picture, and I struggled to get the angle right, and then I ran it through my change it to artwork filters that I use for my illustrations, and it just I could never quite get it right. It looks good the way it is in the book, but it was never quite what I imagined in my head. But it does represent that kind of double-edged beauty. Cacti are amazing when they're in flower. They're amazing in terms of survival. The places in Lanzarote where you can see these wonderful different wild cactus and gardened landscaped cactus are pretty incredible. But there is a double edge to that kind of beauty. And my experience going into Lanzarote did later become a little double edged, because I went with a partner I was with at the time, and he and I did not stay together for more than a couple of years, and it got a little sharper at the end. So I think I took that and I put that all into that really, really confined moment of capturing that photograph of the cactus. And, I'm not sure how many different varieties of meaning are in that one single poignant moment, but the cactus still remains beautiful and it still remains spiky. Now, on the same trip to Lanzarote, is the image that reflected and created the fourth haiku in my collection, Volcanic. Because Lanzarote is a volcanic island, all the sand beaches, the black sand beaches, which is really cool and really strange, the wild volcanic parks and things like that. There was a kind of a constant reminder of man versus nature. In Lanzarote, a lot of things are built directly out of the volcanic rock. A lot of it, the pathways and hiking trails, and even the volcanic national park where the restaurant cooks things over the volcano is quite an interesting reminder of how we live side by side with these vast forces, just like in Below, where I talk about the contrast between the whale and myself. The volcanic haiku should contrast that what exists longer than what we create. And on that note, the fifth and final haiku in my collection, Coffee and Papercuts, is based on a memory that is both repeated and singular. Trust, as it's labeled in the table of contents, was inspired by a photograph I took of my niece being handed an ornament by my other niece to hang on the tree. And tree decoration has always been a family thing. I got upset one year when I was coming home from university, and my family had decorated the tree before I got home, which made me very, very sad, because that was one of my favorite parts of the Christmas experience and the Christmas time, is to family all get together with the massive boxes of ornaments that increase over time and decorate the tree together. So watching and witnessing my niece put the new ornaments that she'd been given for Christmas onto the trees to add to what was already there, and that trusting passing over of ornaments that might or might not be breakable was always kind of the point. You collect these things for the tree. They become part of tradition. My siblings and I have a couple of traditions about fighting over particular ornaments and who gets to hang particular ornaments. Where certain ornaments go on the tree, we always try to hide each other's birth ornaments to kind of create a sort of treasure hunt or a competition who gets to have their birth ornament at the top of the tree. So that trust, that concept in the haiku of my niece putting the decoration on the tree is really special to me. So that's the last haiku within the collection in the poetry section, and it's one of my favorites. I love that image. I love that idea. I love that memory about tree decorating and trusting and handing over ornaments and doing it in a particular order in a particular way. So that is my behind the poem stories on the haikus within it. Gates being the first one in the entire collection was why I wanted to start with the haikus. I know it's a lot of stories, but do feel free to play back the video, pause it, read the haiku and go back to it, look at the image and go back to it. It should be a nice little adventure to take you through the tiny itty bitty moments that I dropped throughout the collection. I will be coming on to the next poem in the collection with a new video soon, so keep your eyes out and check out all the other behind the poem stories on my channel.